financial literacy, and the human condition. Welcome to Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Rayam.
Hi, it's Francis. I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for watching this video. If you're catching us on YouTube, please help us help others by clicking like, subscribe, and all notifications so you don't miss any videos. And check back for the next video. I think you're going to love it. Thanks again. For more information, you can visit us at hugyourmoney.com.
Welcome to Financial Fitness. I'm Jess Tyler, along with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Rayam. Good morning.
Oh, my goodness. You're
Hi.
not feeling well. Hi.
It's the pleasure of having kids. You get whatever they get, you know?
Oh, I don't mean to make fun of this because it's terrible that you're not feeling well, but it's interesting that at least on my side, your image blurs from time to time, which is probably a little bit like how you're feeling.
Yeah, probably. I'm fading in and out.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you for doing the show, even though you're a little under the weather. But
Oh, no problem.
It's an important topic, and we appreciate that. And I don't want to get any gender fights started here, but you know what? Welcome to the world of women. You are a single mom. You have kids, right?
Yeah.
You get whatever they get,
Mm-hmm.
and here you are working.
Yeah,
right?
you kind of have to, I think most people just power through, especially moms.
Yeah, and it's true of single dads too. They have the same issue, right? If you only have one person in the household who can manage the kids, you're going to be working through your sicknesses. But, it really isn't always possible. And I want to talk to women today and the men who care about the women today. And just so that I don't alienate anybody, let me just tell you that I think of this not so much in terms of men and women. And a good analogy would be that, I'm a ballroom dancer. And when we instruct, the old world was, you said, women on one side, men on the other. Now they say leaders on one side, followers on the other. I don't care how we label it. I'm going to call this the X chromosome of money. Okay? I don't care what gender you are, but if you think like the things I'm going to talk about, which is basically how most women think, then you might be falling behind in your retirement plan. You're probably starting on what we say the back foot, right?
Okay.
There are reasons for it, and it isn't about the way you think. It's about the way society has prepared us for this and the fact that we are still behind the eight ball when it comes to earning.
Is this a specific generation you're talking about, or any generation?
It's everybody still.
Okay.
It's worse for older women. Older women are twice as likely to report that they are very unprepared for retirement than men are. Twice as likely. Okay. So we'll go into a little bit of history of it, but let me just first say that we cannot have this discussion without, and believe me, I'm not trying to alienate men here. We work with men all day, every day too. But I think somebody has to hold up the mirror here and say, okay, we still are dealing with this problem. And I'm not making that up. The statistics support it. For instance, women make 84 cents on the dollar compared to men for the same work.
Yeah.
In 2024.
I totally believe that. I believe it's happened to me like every single place I've worked.
And we're now in 2025.
Yeah.
That gender wage gap broadens when we talk about people of color. Latina, 52 cents on the dollar if you're a woman versus a man. 52 cents.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And for Black women, they are earning 66 cents on a dollar. So you know what, ladies? We got to fix this. Okay? This cannot continue to happen. And it can't continue to happen because it affects your retirement. And that's why I was saying, older women are twice as likely to say they're very unprepared for retirement compared to men. Now, let's look at why this happens a little bit, because I'm certainly not blaming anybody specifically. I'm not, if you're in a relationship, don't go to your partner and say, hey, honey, I'm tired of you out earning me.
I've got a whole list of people I want to blame, but I'm going to let you go.
Yeah, no. So we have to look at the sociology and the societal aspects of this. Women in general, not all women, of course, but women, that's my last disclaimer. Okay. I'm tired of apologizing I'm not bashing on men. Please understand this show is about what is happening to women when it comes to managing money and their retirement in the future. So, or people who are X chromosome minded, okay?
Hmm.
If you are X chromosome minded, you are more likely to disproportionately bear the burden or the responsibility, let's call it, of raising children and caring for elderly parents. That brackets you on both ends of the spectrum in ways that decrease your income.
Hmm.
Now, in such broad ways that most people don't think about. Let's take the childbearing for a minute. Okay, so you're not only bearing the children, but you're rearing the children for the first several years at least, probably,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so that reduces your overall income. Not your household income, maybe. Maybe the other person makes up for the difference, but it reduces what you have reported to the government for income,
Hmm.
which in return reduces your Social Security check when you retire. Yet, I don't see many people talking about that. I mean, do you? Do you read articles about that?
No, and I also do think that you can go into it thinking you're going to be all set because you're married and you've got your husband's income. But what happens if something terrible happens? If you go through a divorce, someone dies, it's a whole new thing.
Yeah, it is. And that's another point here. The way people used to look at this was, well, let's back up far beyond, your and my generation, but where people worked, one of the people worked in the marriage, and the other person didn't work outside of the home. They stayed home.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
everything was designed to be purchased on one person's income.
and you
And
could
it
do it then.
and it was. That's
Yeah.
right. And it was. And then, let's say World War II. Let's blame World War II for this, okay? Women took the jobs that men had to take previously because the war was on. And when the men came home, a lot of people said, I'm going to keep working. I like this.
Hmm.
I'm going to keep doing it. That brought two incomes. I'm really oversimplifying history here, but that brought two incomes into the household.
Hmm.
That meant that people who were giving you loans for things like mortgages and cars and other things, that the expenses could go up because a household income could support it,
Hmm.
right? So now we're trapped. Now we have two income households, and now we need both incomes to make ends meet.
Right.
Enter children into the picture. Now what's going to happen? You can't just have kids and just leave them home alone. They're 6 weeks old, but they'll be fine. I'm going to work, right?
Yeah, there's laws
Somebody's
against that.
Yes, thankfully, somebody has to take care of them. And if you're going to hire daycare, we all know that's a
So
fortune.
expensive. Yeah.
Why? Because those people providing daycare have to make a living too, and they
Hmm.
have the same kinds of expenses that we have. So
Right.
it has gotten to be a very expensive, very difficult world to live in financially. You might be thinking, hey, I'm in this great relationship, this great marriage, and we're funneling all this money into my husband's 401k, which is the point you
Hmm.
just brought up.
Yeah.
We're funneling this money into his 401k so that when we retire, this money will be there.
Hmm.
Now, men and women typically think about their money a little differently. And one of the things that is kind of great about the way men think about it, but which is not always tolerable for women, is that they are bigger risk takers. And so they actually enjoy the process of watching the market, taking some risk, seeing the gains. You know, they don't love the losses, but they usually just don't open the envelope. Market's been terrible. I don't want to see my 401k. Okay. Whereas women tend to think more about security, more about being conservative about the dollars. So when you're operating as a couple, as you're operating as a pair, and you're both talking about the money, this can serve you well, right?
Okay.
It can be a little balance between the two of you. First thing we say, we want you both in the meeting. I want to gauge, how are people thinking? Can I bring them to a middle place that serves them both so that they can get to their goal together and happily, right? And complement one another.
Hmm.
But I don't know whether that's a factor of me being a woman advisor or not. There's no scientific way for me to tell in my cross section here. But I will say that statistically, women fire their male advisors within 1 to 2 years of the death of their spouse.
Hmm.
Yet,
Because.
yet, most male advisors, 70% of the male advisors will tell you, although they get fired, they will tell you, I have a great relationship with my women people in my couple. Now,
Hmm.
what's going on there, right? So
Yeah.
why? So here's one of the things that happens. because men think differently about finance than women, and the men actually, in general, like to pore over the charts, talk about the stock market, meet with the financial advisor, right?
Hmm.
Rub elbows to elbows with them. And it's usually a male financial advisor, not always, obviously, case in point, right? Because of that, oftentimes the women who are busy doing things like managing the household finances, going to work, trying to juggle the kids, the dinners, the sports, all the things that do sort of disproportionately fall in many relationships on the woman,
Hmm. Yeah.
they feel like, okay, honey, you got that part. I've got this part. And so they nod politely and they ask a question every now and then. And they say things to their husband quietly, like, I don't know about this guy, or, I hope
Yeah.
he's doing really well for you. That's great, honey. But they don't really have that same relationship with the advisor that the male has, right? So it's statistically true that women outlive men. Obviously, not in every case, right? But women outlive men. And so what happens is the women are largely the ones who will bear the responsibility, and I say that in a nice way, of managing this money in the future.
Hmm.
Think about that for a second. We are busy turning that over to our counterparts, saying, you guys do it. That's great. I love that you're taking risk. That's outside of my tolerance. So you do it. And I'll deal with whatever's left to me should you predecease me.
That doesn't seem smart.
It doesn't seem equitable, right? And it could be reversed. It could be that the woman predeceases the man and the woman has been managing all the finances and the man has no idea what's going on. And believe me, I see this a lot.
I'm just curious in your experience, like when you're counseling people, do you find more men are in control or is it 50-50? Not in control, but have taken the lead in their relationship? Or do you find it's equal?
That's a very interesting question because what I find, it's, thousands of clients, is that the division is almost predictable. The division within a heterosexual couple or even a gay couple, right, is that people will divide that line down the middle without ever talking about it, Jess. They don't
Okay.
discuss it. It's like rote routine. And because everything takes so much effort today and both people are working, that division of labor happens. And what happens, in my experience, is that the women typically are the ones to handle the minutia, which is part of the most important part, right? But we call it
Right.
minutia. You pay the bills. You make sure we have enough money for summer camp. You make sure that I have enough money to get my lunch at work.
You're
And
taking care of
I
the
will,
groceries and the appointments and the
yeah.
extra.
So
Yeah.
you become what I call the steward of household finances.
Hmm.
And the husband or the other partner often becomes the person who says, I'll handle the investments, I'll work, we'll funnel all the money into my 401k, 457, thrift savings plan, whatever it is. And every now and then we'll look at it together and we'll see, when the quarterly statements come in, how much money we have. However, it is the men largely who make the decisions about three things. How much to save,
Hmm.
right? How the money gets invested, and how much money will they need during retirement.
Oh, that's
It's
interesting.
almost, yeah, it was a great question, really, because it is almost always when I start asking those questions,
Hmm.
so clear to me. The man will look at the woman when I say, so how much do you spend in, I don't know, car insurance every year? He'll look at her, I don't know, she's got the numbers. Then I
Yeah.
say, how much is in your retirement account? If she says anything first, it's usually, I don't have very much, or I need to talk to you about that. I'm not saving much. Men
Okay,
first.
much more coming up in part two of Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Ram. But of course, I want your phone number.
Thank you. It's 413-773-3333.
And you can go to hugyourmoney.com. We'll be right back with part two of Financial Fitness on WHMP.
Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor is underwritten by Franklin County Technical School. We build futures. Visit fcts.us or call 413-863-9561.
Welcome back to Financial Fitness. I'm Jess Tyler along with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Ram, and we're talking women today.
We are. Lucky for us, we are two of them. And
Yes.
so when we talk about women, we know we have a different perspective than men talking about women.
Mhm.
And I have to say, I have seen some financial advisors lately who are starting to get this, or some of them have really gotten it, right?
Mhm.
There's one gentleman, I won't mention his name, but I'd like to have him on as a guest. And his his niche is talking to women about how to prepare for this, and he just he comes across as very genuine because he is. He has strong women in his life. His wife is a professional. His mother is a professional. He understands the challenges that they bump up against financially, and he's just found a little niche right there, or a niche,
Hmm.
depending on your pronunciation of it, where he talks to women about just these kinds of things, like, if you don't do something about this, you're going to not be able to retire well.
Do you think that
So
there's a hesitancy with women because it just is like doom and gloom, almost like a prenup where you're like, oh, well, that means I'm going to get divorced. Like if they feel like if they talk about retirement and don't leave it to the husband, you're predicting they're going to die or you're going to get divorced.
I'm sure there is some of that. I mean, that's the resistance to people buying life insurance, that we don't want to face our own mortality.
Yeah.
Long-term care is even more difficult because nobody wants to perceive themselves in that situation. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's subconsciously, I'm sure, you don't want to do that. And of course, when you start off, it's all about, building the wealth, and
Yeah.
things seem to be going well. And to stop that midway and say, I want to rethink this is very
Mm.
difficult. I think in general, women are more conservative, more reserved about bringing these things up. They choose their battles more carefully. They
Hmm.
decide what's important to them to argue about and what is not. And so it might be more important to argue that the kid is going to go to a private school than it is to argue about their own retirement.
Yeah.
Um, things like that. And so I think it creeps into the workplace as well. I pointed out that women are making 84 cents on the dollar, and that gender gap widens, right, for Latinas and blacks.
Hmm.
84 cents on the dollar for the same job in 2024 statistics. Why is that? If
Well,
employers
we,
have to divulge I mean, let's just suppose, right, that everything's supposed to be a level playing field and employers are supposed to disclose these salaries. Why is
yeah.
it that women are still working next to men doing the same job and sometimes have more qualifications, greater qualifications, and are getting paid less?
Yeah. I think employers have been very, um, discreet about wanting to list how much money something costs because they don't want you to know. I know that that's changing
Yeah,
a little bit, and I know there's very many good employers out there. But I'm
that's
just going
right.
to say, in the field of radio, I've worked in radio forever, and the men always make more. Do
You
you pick
know,
that battle or not? You're worried you're not going to get the job or be able to keep the job. They'll get
that's
somebody
right.
else in there who won't complain.
No, that's absolutely right. And I think that's true of everybody. In
Hmm.
cases where I have to say to people, whether it's man or woman, have you thought about asking for a raise? You've done everything else you can do to trim your expenses, but maybe you could increase your income, you could ask for a raise. And it's harder for me to get a woman to consider. I don't tell them you have to go and ask for a raise, but it's
Right.
harder for me to get a woman to consider her self-worth
Hmm.
than to have a man consider his self-worth.
I think it's because you always think you could be replaced, and then managers or owners have a tendency to make you feel like the company could go under any minute. So you're lucky you have a job. So then
Yeah.
you don't want to, you
You
don't
know
want to
what?
toss that ball up in the air.
Everybody is replaceable. We all would like to think we aren't, but we are.
Right. Yeah.
I can just give you again, my cross section is I work with five different hosts basically, right, on radio. Uh,
Hmm.
three of them are men and two of them are women, right? So I have a pretty good feel for what it feels like to do a show with a man and what it feels like to do a show with a woman. And you know what I
Hmm.
think?
What?
I think there isn't a difference.
Oh, really?
I swear to you,
I think
because
I'm
it's
much
not
funnier,
just
Francis. I think I'm much funnier.
well, I have more time on the air with you, and you are pretty funny, I have to say. But it isn't about the gender, it's about the person.
Yeah.
I mean, my shows with Kevin are very different than my shows with Nick, and they are in booths side by side
Yeah. That's interesting.
and the same topic, but they have a different audience.
They're different age groups too, though. Kevin's much younger than Nick, or a little bit younger
Yeah,
than Nick.
yeah, that's
I
true.
wonder if that changes your viewpoint on money too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, yes, it does in some ways that the age has something to do with it, but in terms of the gender and the skill to do the job,
Hmm.
you're all great. I
Oh,
don't I would never pit one of you against the other and say this person should be earning less or this person should be earning more. And
right.
so, a lot of the colleges have gone to this blind testing now where you can't ask questions that lead you to understand what ethnicity somebody is, what gender somebody is, whatever you're trying to make your decision on accepting these applicants. And
Hmm.
it's difficult, and there are lots of ways to get around it. And I think that's what employers do or will do with this disclosure of how much the salary should be for a job. I would appeal to the employer's sense of ethics and morals and say, pay women what you would pay men if they're as qualified. If they're
Right.
not, pay them less because they're not as qualified, no matter what their gender is. Okay?
Exactly. Yeah.
But don't
Yeah, I agree
see
with that.
them, yeah, don't see them as though they're not as qualified because of their gender. Um, okay, I don't want to end, and we're far from that yet, but I don't want to end without giving people some practical tips about what they can do to fix this imbalance. Let's suppose you're a woman listening to this, or someone with that X chromosome money gene that I'm talking about, and you're listening to this and you're saying, yeah, that sounds like us. That sounds like me. What can I do about that? I think the financial advisor we have right now, it seems fine. He's making us money. She's making
Yeah.
us money. Okay. You brought up the idea of age, the topic of age. Does age make a difference? Yes, it makes a difference. And it makes it especially in this way, Jess. If you are younger, you can tolerate more risk. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean you like it, right? You might be a little uncomfortable with it, but you have time to make up for the losses that inherently come from time to time with taking more risk, right?
Hmm.
That's that trade-off. You hope you make more money and you take the risk of maybe losing some. And so
Hmm.
you're going up, down, up, down, up, down, and you're trying to get to the top, okay? As you get older and you need to know that that money will be there in retirement, you need to worry about two things. The first is, well, three things, okay? How much money it is.
Hmm.
But that almost doesn't matter when you think in terms of income, and I'll explain that. But how much money it is, how it's going to last you your lifetime, and how it's being managed,
Okay.
okay? The how it's being managed, and I'll make some enemies here, I'm sure. But don't worry, advisors, you got more young people coming your way who will love the risk, okay? But as you get older, you might want to take a look at who is managing your money. Most advisors who are managing money for people who are younger and going into retirement transition are
Hmm.
really skillful and really great at growing money. But their mindset is all about growing money. How much money can we amass?
Yeah.
It is not about spending money, which is what will happen to you when you transition into retirement. You will stop earning, you will stop
Hmm.
growing at that rate, right? Hopefully, you're still growing money, but you need to rely on that nest egg to be able to exist while you are spending money.
Right. And you don't
So
know how long that's going to be.
you don't know how long that's going to be. And so the shift from advisor to advisor, now some advisors can handle it all, but in my experience, it's not really how it works well. For instance, I'm not an advisor who does a lot of growth stuff, right? I
Okay.
used to be a registered investment advisor. I used to do that on a daily basis. But what I know about money is it's a very broad topic. And if I'm going to do the kinds of things I do, help people get out of debt, help them with a budget, help them retire successfully, I cannot, and do radio shows and all of that, I cannot have my finger on the pulse of the market in such a way that I'm managing those portfolios every day in the way that I would feel comfortable
Hmm.
with for my clients. Could I
Yeah, it's a
put up
lot
a
of
cookie
work.
cutter system? Sure.
Yeah.
Would I? No. So that's where I leave that to other advisors who do that. But when you start to think about, am I going to be able to retire? You need to think about how are you going to spend that money down or spend that money, not how you're going to spend it down. That points to a number of things that I can go over quickly about things you can change, but it points to every, I almost never qualify anything by saying every or never or not, right? Every person's portfolio maybe should have a portion of that portfolio in something like an annuity. Now, I know some annuities get a bad rap. So do some cars. Okay, there's a gazillion annuities. But the
Hmm.
thing about an annuity that might work for you is you might still have some earning potential in the market, but protect your downside from losses. And here's the key: get a lifetime income you cannot outlive, right? An income you cannot outlive. If you live to be 102, 108, they still have to pay you even if you've run out of money. Now, is it a
Mm.
place for your whole portfolio? No, of course not. No place is, right?
Yeah.
But But for part of it, that could help you get that security you're looking for. Women, compared to men, as I said, men love to watch the market and talk about the charts and all that. Women are looking for security. They want their goals to be heard, right? They want to be taken seriously, but they want to know that money's going to be there because they suspect that they may outlive the men.
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
men have a similar problem, Jess, in that they really should, they tend to, I think, as a group, underestimate their life expectancy. We all see those government charts, you're going to live to be 76, and it's scary, right? And you think, well, my father died at whatever. And
Right.
so I think the men are less concerned about, outliving their money, but they should be more concerned
Hmm.
about it because men are living longer, and so are women, right? We're living longer, we're taking better care of ourselves. So I think all of those things are true. I'd love to have another hour to talk about this, and I'm sure we will continue this in another show. But just so that I give you some things that you can do, some action points you can do right now to start to change this balance. The
Okay.
first thing women are going to be right on, cut the expenses, right? Trim your budget as best you can. Pay off your debt early. Stuff is going to take talking to your partner. You're going to have to say, hey, I think I'm behind the eight ball here. I don't have as much in retirement as you have. Um, and it's a lot. Like women have way less than 50% of what men have in general
Mm.
in their retirement dollars at different ages, and not time to go into the stats. But take advantage of your 401k catch up. In 2025, you're going to be able to put in about $31,000 into your 401k, and the employer-employee match has gone up to 70,000. So that's if you're over 50 years old. If you're over 60, from 60 to 63, because of the Secure 2.0, you can add an extra 11,250
Okay.
instead of 7,500. So you can put some money away there with a cap between you and your employer of $70,000. So you might not be able to afford it, but you should know you can do that if you can find the room in your budget to do it. If you're over 59 and a half, consider moving some of this money now, using your in-service transfer into something like that special kind of an annuity so that it has time to mature. And when you're ready for it, bam, the income's there. Okay.
Okay.
You can usually do that within a year, but you might want to consider something like that at this stage. There's a couple of quick things I want to just say. Check your beneficiaries on these contracts. You need to remember that things like annuities precede your will. So check them because you don't want your ex-spouse, getting that money if something happens to you and your wife or
Hmm.
husband is sitting there saying, why don't I have this? Especially in divorce and situations like that, review your deeds, make sure they're held properly, joint tenants, not tenants in common, things like that. Check with your attorney. And overall, just use the financial and legal tools that are available to you to be able to get a handle on this. And for women, ladies, don't do it anymore. Don't just say, "Hey, the money's in my husband's 401k. It's going to be okay."
Hmm. Yeah. All
You
right. Let's
know,
get your phone number if anybody's got questions on this. I'm sure that they will.
Sure. Yeah, I hope so. I'd love to talk to people about this. My number's 413-773-3333.
And you can go to hugyourmoney.com as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jess, for doing it under the weather.
Of course, we'll be back next week with another edition of Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Ram, right here on WHMP.
Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor is underwritten by Hug Your Money. So unique, it's patented. Financial coaching and more information at hugyourmoney.com.